guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. I'm Peter Martin. Thank you very much for joining us. Alan Rough is with me. Darren Jackson and Alan Rough's driver, Tam Cowan, here with us as well to take us through the next hour. We've got lots to talk about. Celtic slip up on and off the park. We'll discuss that. Hibs make a new signing. We'll get your thoughts on that. And there's lots of transfer news we can discuss with your favourite club. If there's anything you want to talk about, let's not forget Dundee United against St Johnstone, scheduled for tonight. We'll get into the meat and bones of that as well. So don't forget, like, share and follow us. If you can follow us, it would be magnificent. If you can share it with your friends, thank you. All on Facebook. Hit the red button on YouTube and we are there. So, Roughie, we have on more than a few occasions said our piece on the Celtic issue. I don't think we've shirked anything on this. Last night, the only person really who was going to comment on it was the assistant, which was Gavin Strachan, who was in the dugout. But other than that, I think Celtic came in for a fair bit of criticism prior to the game, and then the criticism followed after the game when a depleted Celtic side slipped up to Hibs.
Yeah, I think Celtic would have went into that game hoping a win would sort of diffuse some of the situation. Unfortunately for them, that never happened, obviously, with the goal. I'm really surprised there's not been a statement come out. You know, I think a club of that magnitude have to come out and say something. I mean, they're not slow in releasing statements at some time, but this is, I think they need to bring everybody back on side here and hold their hands up and just admit the wrongdoings that have been going on in the last week or so. So for me, you know, that it's just another terrible result, you know, just to throw everything into what has been happening in the last week. And the only way they can dig themselves out is winning games, but they're not doing that now.
Yeah, well, this is what Gavin Strachan had to say after the game.
There's regret that one person caught the virus, but there's not a regret in terms of the permission that we got to go, the protocols that we followed, that we have done the whole season. It's just regrettable that we got one positive, which we could have got at any time, really.
Strangely enough, Tam, on this one, you know, nobody is debating the legalities of the trip. I don't think that's the issue. I think maybe people are just looking for a note of contrition to draw a line in the sand and say maybe it was insensitive, ill-advised. Maybe we should just say sorry for the trip itself in these times. Not, I don't think anybody was looking for a witch hunt on Celtic. It was just that many people viewed it as the wrong move morally in these times.
And interestingly, Peter, I think you'll find that the majority of the criticism now is actually coming from Celtic fans. For a lot of fans, other clubs, primarily the Rangers fans, of course, it's more of a kind of popcorn moment as we move into Celtic, the banter years. But I think that, you know, I think a lot of folk need to remember here this thought about essential travel. You know, that for me was not an essential trip, simply because if it was essential, then that would suggest that every other club should have been doing it as well if it was essential. Of course it wasn't essential. And it can't be essential when Celtic have got a state-of-the-art training facility at Lennoxtown. And then you chuck in the strange bits and bobs like Christopher Julian going when he's injured. And then Celtic are making out that he was getting treatment when he was over there. He should have been at home. That was no essential. He could have got treatment for the physios and the doctors. I'm sure they've got a whole team of them at Lennoxtown. So the whole thing is absolutely bonkers. And as you say, the cherry in the cake, and probably what is really upsetting the Celtic fans, is that they came back and against a Hibs team that couldn't buy a result in recent weeks, thanks to the shortage of personnel perhaps, Celtic struggled to a one-each draw. And, you know, the league table, it wasn't looking great beforehand, but it's just looking, you know, farcical now. So I think it is very interesting that the Celtic fans themselves have weighed in this issue. And good on them, ex-professionals. After you finished your programme yesterday, Peter, I watched the live coverage last night, and Andy Walker got absolutely torn in about Celtic. And I know exactly where Andy's coming from. You know, because it wasn't an out-and-out jolly that Celtic were on. But the camera doesn't lie. And the minute you're seeing pints of beer, the minute you're seeing the players in numbers indoors in a hotel bar, because let's not forget, it was all about crossing the white line. The football fraternity gets special privileges, but only when they cross the white line. If they're going onto the training pitch, if they're going onto the football pitch, but not when, as the picture showed, they were sitting en masse in a hotel bar in Dubai. That is just not on. The whole thing is an utter farce. But hey, it's all part of the wonderful world of Scottish football. It's a chapter we'll never forget.
And again, the Celtic captain Scott Brown released, obviously this statement came out from Scott Brown saying, everyone is going to question everything. That's the modern day era. Everyone has a say in everything we do. We got the okay from the government and we made sure we followed the guidelines from there. We went and worked hard on training. That's what the whole thing was. People don't see our training daily or see how hard we work. Sometimes you're allowed to sit on the sunbeds and have some downtime as well. And he goes on to say, what we do away from the camera in training is for us to benefit in games. As you've seen in the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've come back from Dubai and done really well because we work extremely hard. Darren, I don't think anyone is questioning players working hard. And you know, listening and reading Scott's comments there, again, that's missing the point here. I don't think that's the issue on this one. I think it's the issue of, you know, everybody in lockdown, sensitivity around people actually going out of the country. We were well aware that, you know, Dubai was on the increase for COVID. It was still on the exempt list. But why go? And when you go, to come back with a COVID positive test leaves you wide open. I mentioned that to John Kennedy on Saturday ahead of the game, that if one person got COVID, they were in trouble. And that's exactly how it unfolded. The car crash for me, Darren, is if we are in a situation in the next day that a Hibs player comes back and says he has COVID, you know, we're right back in the eye of the storm again here.
No, of course we are, Peter. Yeah, I mean, they put themselves under pressure. I said in the last show, I don't think they should have gone. I probably didn't say they shouldn't have gone because of the pandemic, which is probably the biggest thing. But I don't think they should have gone because of whether they won the Old Firm game or lost the Old Firm game. I didn't think it was right because of social media. Now, do I have a problem? If it was right them going away, do I have a problem them sitting having a pint? No, because even elite professionals are allowed downtime, and that you can have a drink. Is there a problem with Julian going? I've been on many trips that injured players go because the manager wants to keep the squad together. All the first team physios and the first team doctor would be there, and they would be working him in a way that what he could do being there. So it's just unfortunate. If it wasn't Julian had got had got COVID, nothing would have been said about him being there. So I don't have a problem with him being there, but there is a problem with the squad being there. I think it's totally backfired. I mean, you're saying about the Hibs player, yes, it would be a disaster if a Hibs player came back, but that Hibs player could have caught it somewhere else. We don't know that. But I think I agree with Roughie. I think Celtic could have come out with a statement and just whether they believe it, they could have just backtracked a little bit and just accepted a little bit responsibility. And yes, they were given permission by the government. They were given permission by the SFA, but they're big boys and they are clever guys. They should make that decision themselves that maybe this time is not the best time to go. Because yes, in the past, as Scott said, in the past, they go there and they do work hard because you can get out twice a day, the sun, you can coach, and I think it has helped them in the past. But this time, I just think it was the wrong time and it was the wrong decision.
Just on that point, Roughie, you know, nobody will be able to track where a Hibs player got it. That narrative will be lost. You know, if a Hibs player comes out in the next 24 to 48 hours with COVID, they're not going to say, I got it in a Tesco in Musselburgh. It's going to be all about, he's got it, those players were on the park. You know, they'll never be able to control that narrative. They'll not even be able to track it. Geez, we can't even track half the country, never mind trace where somebody got the actual COVID.
No, I think the whole logic will go out the window. Nobody will look at the ways you get it and the way you don't. It'll just be a Hibs player on that part got it, and then Celtic will try and talk their way out of it. Well, every Celtic player that was on the park was tested negative and tested negative twice. So, but the publicity that it's going to go with isn't going to listen to all these things that are going on. They're just going to look, this is what's happened. And that's what Celtic have opened themselves to. And it's just unfortunate. And it's the biggest thing for me is that I keep harping on about it. It's the rest. It's the resties that are starting to suffer, for these misdemeanors, and it's just going to escalate, and hopefully it can calm down and we can get the season finished because that's what we want.
Peter,
Okay,
I think it's important to say at this point, Peter, before you spark mass panic in East Lothian, that you were only using Tesco and Musselburgh as an example there, weren't you?
Yes. Yes. Anywhere. There are other supermarkets and other places where you can catch it, to be perfectly honest with you. Well done, Tam. That's what I like. A wee bit of legal grounding there from Tam Cowan. Who would have thought you would have corrected me? But you're absolutely right. Listen, here's a list. I mean, this is the frightening aspect of it. Obviously, I was there at Celtic Park last night, but there's the list of the missing players. From it, Barkas, Ayer, Christie, Edouard, Griffiths, El Yunusi, Ayeti, El Hamid, Brown as well, missing on that list. It's a fair list in Cham, and of course Near Beaton was suspended. The Celtic were playing better football, and then suddenly, they lost to Rangers. They were trying to bounce back. It was a hard graft to expect, a makeshift side to try and come up with it. They had more than enough, I think, Roughie, to get past Hibs, but they didn't bank on Kevin Nisbet.
No, and unfortunately it was another mistake by the young goalkeeper, that he could have done a lot better. No, as I said, that when Turnbull scored a fantastic goal, a wonderful goal, he's becoming the star of the season for me. But Celtic would have thought they would have rode that 1-1-0. Get the game finished, get into the dressing room, deal with everything's coming their way. But the goal for Nisbet, just highlights everything, and everybody's then got to do interviews and everybody's got to be put in a position they don't want to be in. They'd rather be saying, yeah, great result, 1-0, fantastic goal from Turnbull, let's move on to the next game. But that goal itself was, again, what's been happening to Celtic all year. Balls thrown into the box, nobody defending it properly. And I have to say, last night they were unfortunate. It dropped to Nisbet, to put it in the back of the net. But it's just been a failing from the start of the year with Celtic.
Yeah, and of course, let's spare a thought for Hibs, because Jack Ross mentioned after the game that you can understand why some Hibs players didn't want to play in the game.
I think this was the first occasion whereby maybe players' families had expressed some anxiety. And I think that's due to the prevalence and the speed of transmission and everything that is going on in the wider public at the moment. And I think players are fairly robust. However, they will be not influenced, but they will take on board what their loved ones will say at times. And I think that was probably the catalyst behind it, if you like, and just seeking assurance, not necessarily for the players themselves, but maybe for those that were asking the questions about, is it safe for them to play the match. The players, certainly not one single player stepped off the bus in any sort of anxious state about playing the game.
Yeah, and you can understand their concerns, Darren. If you're a player and suddenly, you're going back to your families, and your families, the last thing they want is to be open to anything when you're supposed to be in that protective bubble.
Of course, Peter. Yeah, we're all talking about being in bubbles and all that. And then you're going to play this game, and there's a team who's been away in Dubai, and if someone's come back with COVID, and you would be worried, and it would be your families that would be worried. Now, once they stepped on the pitch, you saw the commitment they gave. There is no way you could say that the Hibs players were worried about catching it on the pitch and all that, because they put on a good performance. They never shirked anything. So once they crossed it, as Tam spoke about, once you cross that white line, they gave the manager everything. But yes, I do get the concern of the Hibs players, and I know there was a request beforehand, could the Celtic players be tested again? I just think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just think they probably could have tested just to give people a peace of mind that yes, we've tested again, we've asked what you've done, but it was declined, and I was a wee bit surprised in that. But Celtic will have the reasons.
Yeah, Roughie, just on one other point that Andy Clark has highlighted here, and obviously is, listen, he's mentioned, what about John Kennedy's statement on Duffy and then suddenly played him? I mean, this was one that kind of flummoxed quite a few of us as well. He was supposed to be going back to London, and then suddenly he's not back in London, and then suddenly he's thrust into the game.
Yeah, well, I think he'd been given time off, rather than going away, to go and see his family because he's been up here, But I mean, Celtic are the only people who know the true goings on of the conversation between what was happening with the player. It certainly was a strange one, but Celtic were in a desperate situation. They didn't have any centre halves, they didn't even any centre forwards. So I think you've got to go back to the guy and say, look, I appreciate what was said to you, but this is extreme circumstances and we need you to play in the game. So, and that's what happened.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, all sorts of questions that are unanswered, and certainly no statement or anyone other than Gavin Strachan coming forward in front of that camera. It might happen in the next 24 hours, 48 hours. Will it blow over? Will it be a storm in a teacup? It certainly won't be if some of those Hibs players contract coronavirus. Amazingly, something that we forgot about until now is the fact that Hibs had a good, hard-earned 1-1 draw. Kevin Nisbet thought they should have won it.
I think it's something we deserved from the game. I thought we started the game very well and had a few chances. Then consider it's a great free kick. But we showed some character to get back in the game and take a point. You need to turn it around as quick as possible and at least get a point. And it is hard coming here after a few defeats and that, but I thought the lads were brilliant and we stepped up and we got a draw and could have possibly won it.
Yeah, I mean, he was quiet for the game. He had a couple of efforts, and then suddenly just that one chance, Darren. That's the mark of him at the moment. He's in the right place. And it was a lovely side foot into the roof of the net.
Yeah, I mean and he's not been scoring, so he's probably not as confident as. But he was hanging about. It was a great ball in the box. We were talking. Obviously, Roughie mentioned earlier about the goalkeeper. I wouldn't blame. Yes, you've got to blame the goalkeeper once the ball comes in the box, Peter. But Celtic are giving too many fouls away. I thought Laxalt had a good game, but on the other side, Turnbull, who had a fantastic game, gave a foul away. They've not been dealing with crosses into the box, so you've got to stop it at source. So don't give stupid fouls away round about the area so the balls can come in. But going back to, they deserved a point. I don't think they deserved to win the game, but I think they definitely deserved a point. And as I say, Nisbet, people think, it's just lucky he's fell there, but he's sniffing. He's a striker, and he finished it well.
And a good signing, Darren Jackson Irvine.
Peter, I've always been a fan. I think I've always been a fan of Jackson Irvine. Brilliant in both boxes, box to box, great energy. He'll get you a goal. He'll defend you a goal. I think it's an absolute fantastic signing. Just you and I, Tam.
No, don't worry about that. I knew there would be silence because obviously if I go dead, Roughie just goes dead as well because that's part of our contract. Tam, I'm just looking at the Premiership table. They could actually save a lot of bother, Tam, and a lot of hassle. They could call the league now, give the title to Rangers and then just batten down the hatches to see if we can come out of this COVID with everybody with a vaccine, because it looks fairly straightforward now at the top end, Tam. The bottom end, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, so you're saying stop the league just now, Peter. So you've already fallen out with Tesco and Musselburgh, and now everybody in Dingwall is after your is after your neck as well. No, all kidding aside, Peter, we've obviously had a new manager in at Motherwell, and MD's ever asked me about the new manager. I'm no forensically looking at it. I was only looking for a guy to come in at Motherwell who would keep us up. Simple as that, because as Hearts found out to their cost last year, you could be sitting there bottom of the league and they actually then call the division and they think that's it, no more football, boys, who's bottom, right, bang, you're relegated. So we're teetering in the brink down there, so I just want us to pull away, get a couple of results, because the way everything's going and with the lower leagues, if you like, being called this week, or being certainly suspended this week, you don't know what's round the corner. And the only good thing I would say is that, nobody really liked in their heart of hearts the way last season finished, particularly, of course, Hearts fans, Partick Thistle fans, etc. And as much as you did have some Rangers fans hoping and praying that the league could have continued and they could have caught Celtic, it was highly, highly unlikely. But the word that they're using, of course, now down Ibrox way is precedent. The fact this precedent has been set. So if you call the leagues now, I don't think there's going to be an almighty kerfuffle. You'll just look at how far clear Rangers are and they'll award them the title. There you go, boys, 1 in a row. Celtic didn't get the 10. And then the other issues start occurring all the way down. But, we just need to keep our fingers crossed that we can keep playing the games. I was accused this week, Peter, of not moaning when Motherwell were originally awarded 6 points for the games against St Mirren and Kilmarnock. Somebody went on Twitter and gave me an absolute bollocking for that. And he was factually incorrect. I've said it in this programme. I've said it in the radio at the weekend. I was wanting those games played. Simple as that. If the only football that we can get is watching it on laptops and on your phone and everything, then you want to watch football. It's all we've got. I didn't want any clubs being awarded points, but play the games as much as possible. And talking of which, just when Celtic think they might have ridden out the storm this week, they do, of course, have the forum team in the country after Rangers, Livingston, to play on Saturday with Celtic's depleted COVID hit squad. So that's going to be very interesting as well.
Yeah, the other thing about it, and I've known you for more than a few years, Tam, because you are from this area, and I know the way you operate, the way your brain ticks, and the friends that you have. I'm worried about the fact that if Motherwell were to hit the bottom position in the Scottish Premiership, whether you would continue friendships with people that you've had as friends for a considerable amount of years, because once Motherwell hit the bottom, if Roughie gets onto the old, and I'm just saying to you, onto the old WhatsApp group, and they cast a vote, Tam, Motherwell are relegated without even a thought of the friendship that you and him have. I mean, so bear that in mind, Cowan. He will sink you in a WhatsApp group within 2 seconds.
I will bear that in mind. But the thing about it is as well, Peter, just the other wee thing to mention about that, I've even heard since we were kind of a wee bit in the doldrums in recent months, some Motherwell fans, including one of my pals, saying, "Oh, you know what? A wee year down in the First Division, as we still like to call it, a wee year down in the First Division would be great, and going to grounds and all the rest that we haven't visited for years." I keep telling folk, particularly Motherwell fans, no chance. In the current climate, particularly in the year of COVID, etc., you need to be in that top flight to get whatever money is available into the club's bank. I said it last week in the show here. I'm saying it, and again, don't even entertain the idea that a wee Jolly Boys trip down to Dumfries for a Queen of the South game would be a good laugh or a day out. That's nonsense.
Yeah, look at Roughie. He's smirking there like Blofeld in Doctor No. Your time will come, Cowan. It's coming. It's as simple as that. Once Roughie gets the vote, Darren, your old club Dundee United. In fact, your old club St Johnstone. In fact, every club in the Premiership that you played for, they're playing tonight. That rescheduled game finally gets the go-ahead.
Yeah, and they're going to be paying a tribute to Jim McLean tonight, so it would be nice for Dundee United to get a result and just in his memory. As I said, I spoke about him last week, Peter, just wonderful, Mr. Dundee United. I mean, taking over, being chairman and all, it just He did everything at the club. Like, you talk about managers nowadays, or you've just got to be a coach because you've got a sporting director, you've got a chief exec, you've got a chairman. Wee Jim was them all. Wee Jim just ran the club, and it was fantastic how he ran the club and how he coached the club. And you don't get that now. So I do hope. I think if you want my prediction now, I do think it'll be a draw. But I would like Dundee United to get a result just in his memory.
Yeah, that would be a nice touch to it. I'm not sure, and Tam, you might be able to enlighten me of this. And Roughie, my apologies if I'm not asking you on this one, but I will get your thoughts on it. Is there a provision in place to put a statue of Jim McLean outside Tannadice? Are the wheels in motion for it? Because I can think of nothing better.
Oh no, Peter, I think the wheels were in motion a while ago. I think it may even, it was commissioned. I think it cost £60,000. They had a variety of fundraising campaigns. You actually just reminded me of it there, because we had one of the campaigners on the radio with us more than a year ago now, as they were trying to generate the money. So I think, I might be over-exaggerating here, but I think it's almost sitting in storage. Just ready to be unveiled, but I don't have the precise details. But the big shame about that tonight, or even on Saturday when the game should have gone ahead, it can go ahead tonight, of course, because Dundee United don't have any injury problems tonight, so they've put the undersoil heating on, which is a nice touch. But no, I thought allegedly. No, it's a nice wee thaw tonight. A nice wee thaw, and Lawrence Shankland ran off his wee groin strain, so he's fine. No, what I was going to say, Peter, and you'll all agree with me here, particularly Darren, there are various times since last March, Peter, moments, games when you think, oh, how good would it have been to get a crowd? And I feel really, really sorry for the Dundee United fans who can't be at Tannadice. Saturday was meant to be Jim McLean Day. I'm sure they'll bill it as Jim McLean Night this evening. But what a great shame. The Dundee United fans, back for his day all the way through, couldn't be at the game to properly celebrate his memory, and haven't done it at the club. It's awful, you know. But they've just got to get on with it, and hopefully, I mentioned this actually last. I don't know if it was in your show, Peter, on the radio, but I wonder if even. I know Jim McLean has only recently passed away. I don't know what Dan thinks about this, but I wonder if they could have just postponed Jim McLean Day until the first day that the fans were all allowed back into the stadium, you know. And I mean, Tannadice right away, that would pack the place out. It would be immense.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Peter, I actually would imagine they would have something, because they want the fans to celebrate his. I mean, you celebrate his life and what he did for the club. I would imagine that they would have something like that.
I'll tell you what.
And incidentally, Peter, the Darren will like this, being for that era. We had a wee competition on here a couple of weeks ago asking what would be a more fitting tribute at the Dundee United St Johnstone game, first game back at Tannadice since the great man passed. What would be a more fitting tribute? Because it's Jim McLean, rather than just a minute's applause or a minute's silence. And the winner of the competition, Darren will be up for us, said that, so it'll be tonight it should happen. They should have a minute's silence with an 8-minute option.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to say, I mean, off the back of some of the stories, and Roughie, you know better than anyone, Tam will have it on the radio as well, that the amount of players, Darren is included in this, you know, can you imagine they erect a statue to him, and the amount of players that have played for him will have to walk past that statue. And I just wonder if they've got that fear in the back of their neck, Roughie, that the eyes of the statue are moving and watching them as they go in the door at Tannadice.
Yeah, I'm sure every ex-Dundee United players had his wrath and have memories of getting that, you know. I used to tell the story. I mean, Dan, I remember when you go to Tannadice, you has to walk up the steps to get to the away dressing room, and it'd be standing at the top of the steps waiting and you coming, you know, and then slaughter you before you get into your own dressing room, never mind the away dressing room. You know, and that's what kind of guy he was, you know. He was just the terror. I mean, and I've said it on numerous occasions, because the dressing rooms were so near together. At half time, in our away dressing room, you could hear him verbally slaughtering every Dundee United player, and they were probably winning 3-0. And that's just the way he was. He was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Peter, he was actually worse if you won a game or you were winning a game than losing a game, because he could take that you're going to make mistakes, but see if you were winning a game and you were sloppy and all that, and you took your foot off the. I mean, he used to go. I mean, Roughie, you would hear, because he did it all the time, and it was. I mean, some of the stories, obviously I couldn't say, but he was a legend, and he was just, because I always used to think, Peter, that people always go to the papers and people want to tell stories about Jim McLean. Nobody did that, because see everything he said in the dressing room, yes, some of the things were, but he was right in football-wise, he was right in everything he said. So you actually couldn't say, well, you're wrong, and go to, like when you left, go to the papers and say, well, he said this and he said that, but that's wrong, because he just knew the game inside out, and he's an absolute wonderful coach.
My favourite story is the Billy Kirkwood one. You probably heard it. And Dundee United are going to the Scottish Cup final, and they haven't announced the team, and they're on the team bus, and he's getting up and handing out you used to get 2 complimentary tickets each, and he's handing out the tickets to everybody, and he comes to Billy Kirkwood and he says, "Make sure you keep one for yourself, son."
Brilliant.
The one that I loved, if we get time for another, this one has been well documented as well, and I think it was Maurice Malpass that first told us it years ago on the radio, that it's been attributed to all sorts of folk, was the time that he's in the dressing room after the game, and he's absolutely, as usual you might say, flaming Eamon Bannon. He's calling him every name under the sun, but the minute he's looking about, he can't see Eamon Bannon in the dressing room. 2 minutes later, in comes the bold Eamon with a box under his arm, and McLean says, "And where were you?" And he says, "I was away getting the Man of the Match award."
Brilliant. Thanks to everyone for their countless messages on the issue of Celtic. I mean, listen, we've addressed it ad nauseum for the last 5 or 6 days, and lots of comments. Lots of people believe heads should roll for it. We've discussed that. We've given you our opinion on the morals of going, and we've given you the opinion of the SFA chief executive on the legalities of whether they were allowed to go. We've also commented on the unrest and disagreeing voice of the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, on the affair. And the upshot of it all is, at the top of the programme, if you hear Celtic had a depleted side and slipped up at the weekend. Now, Rangers, 21 points clear, as we talked about, from that Premiership table. I think it's just that coronation all the way to the end of the season for Rangers, and they're now looking at potentially maybe getting... they've been linked with Scott Wright. Now, Darren, he's a player that I like Scott Wright. If anything, maybe injury worries, and some people think, we talk about footballers with mentality. Some people have maybe questioned his hunger, to go right to the top. I've heard that on more than a few occasions about Scott. There's no doubt about his talent. I mean, it would be a good signing if he played regularly for Rangers.
Yeah, well, you don't know, Peter, because you've not seen enough of him. I think it was my son Jacob had looked, and he scored something like 5 goals in 60 games. Now he's 23, and I could be wrong here. People will check up and all that. But if he has only played 60 games, then is he 23?
Yeah,
it's not a lot of games, Peter. Do you know what I mean? And so yes, injury prone, but Derek's not played him an awful lot over the last few years. Now, that could be down to inconsistency and maybe not trusting him a little bit. And listen, he's got pace. He's got pace to burn. I mean, really, really quick. He did kind of... When we were at St Mirren, Stubbsy and I and Chipper, we played them in the League Cup, and they beat us 4-1, and he destroyed us. He was really good. I mean, his pace that day did destroy us. So yes, they're probably looking at the big picture and looking at his ability, looking at his pace, and thinking he's still got lots of football in him. He's still young. He's still got to learn. and we think we can coach him. And he's obviously had good coaching for Doc and Dale up there, but he's just not played a lot of games for me, Peter.
Yeah, the other thing about it, Rough, they might be looking to offset the cost that they have to pay Rangers for Ross McCrory. It might be one of those wee contra deals.
Yeah, I think he's got something as well. When Gary Caldwell's, as we tried to get him on loan from Aberdeen, but I think he went to Dundee. And his initial games with Dundee, he was absolutely superb. And then, as Darren said there, he just seems to lose his way a wee bit. He falls into the Greg Stewart one for me. I think Greg Stewart, we all know what he could do. And then he's went to Rangers and not really done anything at all. So maybe it's just the case that Rangers need to find a Scottish player that's not going to cost them a lot of money to make up the squad. And you never know, sometimes players go to a big club and you then see the full potential when they're playing with better players. But I'm like Darren, I think he needs an extended run. There's no point in going somewhere and not kicking the ball, not at that stage of his career.
Yeah, and quite a lot of people asking us questions, various ones obviously on the red hot topic. It's one of those burning issues. We try and deal with as many of them as possible. Gary McPherson says, Peter, what about your recent suggestion that Celtic have a top CEO? He thinks it's nonsense. I think it's difficult to. I think once you get a scattergun approach to this whole episode, people start to lose sight of what the issue is about. People start to just scattergun everything because there is absolutely no doubt when you look at the evidence of 9 years of dominating Scottish football. That board and the figures that they've delivered over 9 years, they have a board that's the envy of many across Britain. And as a chief executive, he is up there as one of the top chief executives in football. Whether they look for the figurehead of Peter Lawwell or whether they think it's Dermot Desmond or someone else or the board as a collective, as far as Celtic are concerned, we're dealing with an issue which they've possibly failed on. I don't think you need to elongate things to start trying to scattergun everybody about whether they're good or not. Everybody, regardless of their qualities in a job, can make mistakes. We've all made them, Tam.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Every day is in the firing line now for Celtic. That is the bottom line. And the figureheads, the head honchos at the club, Dermot Desmond and Peter Lawwell, of course they're going to get it in the neck. That's the nature of the beast. And what seems absolutely barmy though, Peter, it was only a matter of weeks ago, a few short weeks ago, that Celtic were celebrating a quadruple treble. I mean, so it just does seem very strange. But in Scottish football, and certainly in the city of Glasgow, it's all about that great rivalry. And the bottom line is, just over 8 years ago, not a long time in football terms, Peter, Rangers were kicking off a season in the fourth tier of Scottish football with a draw against Peterhead. And every man in their dug thought Celtic would be away over the horizon, never to see Rangers again in a level playing field. But here we are, 8 years on, and Rangers, as you mentioned earlier, are 21 points clear at the top. Rangers are in Europe. Celtic have already been bumped out, and the whole thing has just flipped. It's actually quite ridiculous at face value. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a 34-point swing. I don't think too many people would have suggested that at the end of last season. Niall Kane says, what do you guys make of the shock news which broke last night about Sol Bamba being treated for cancer? And Niall goes on to say he hopes he makes a speedy recovery. Yes, it's a good point. It puts everything in perspective in life. Sol Bamba had a period in Scottish football, Roughie, and we do hope he does indeed make a speedy recovery. I thought he was a really good player. I think, am I right in thinking he also had a period at Dunfermline, Roughie, as well?
Yeah.
I think he did for a wee while. Yeah, but I think he'll be well remembered by Hibs. I think he came into the team.
Yeah.
The time when Hibs were experimenting with teams from a lot of other countries and bringing them in, and I mean, it's just horrendous. We all talk about the day-to-day challenges that you have, and when you hear things like that, it's just a sad reflection, and where we are, that these things happen, and it hurts even more because it's somebody that we're all part and parcel of in the football sense. But just wish him all the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicely said, Roughie, although I love the way you managed to put in that statement there, Hibs were going through a period of experimenting with foreign footballers. I mean, what was this? Well, was this a strategy or an Easter Road board meeting?
Oh, they'd French players. They'd French players
people
in
from outside
Trinidad and Tobago and
all right,
and
okay,
things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know who was buying the players.
Roughie, the French player and the boy from Trinidad and Tobago weren't bad.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right, Darren.
They were special.
They were top drawer. Listen, by the way, there are clubs that are angry out there, clubs who've always got a chip in their shoulder. I wonder who they could be. Here's the latest statement from Partick Thistle, who are unhappy with the SPFL and the SFA and everybody, you included. Partick Thistle wants to put on record its support for any measures the government puts in place to stop the spread of COVID-19. But the news football below the championship has been shut down is the culmination of a series of circumstances we foretold last April. We fought for a restructure to allow us to continue playing if football was stopped. We warned that the distribution of monies, which penalised Thistle by £350,000, could come back to bite us. We're looking at furloughing staff and players, which is an awful step for a professional club. And they go on to say, players want to play and uncertainty is not the basis for a move. Where's the sporting integrity if, once the game restarts, we haven't been able to strengthen the team? We are being pushed to the edge and left to wonder whether anyone in the position of authority in Scottish football will do something to help other than simply issue warm but empty words. Well, I know we joke, Roughie. I think it's a very pertinent point that the Partick Thistle board make, and I think it was to their credit. They did fire out that warning shot almost 8 or 9 months ago. I think the only point in it that I have to laugh at is sporting integrity. There is no such thing in this country. But as far as the point you make, it's come back to bite Partick Thistle, and it's coming back to bite a number of clubs, Roughie.
Yeah, I think particularly ourselves in Falkirk, who are full-time clubs, who want the opportunity to play football. That's all we ask for. Don't put us somewhere where other clubs don't want to play. And we've seen it today that there are 4 or 5 clubs in the lower divisions don't really want to play. And that's not the case. We're a full-time club who want to play, and we just want a fair shot at the whatever's going about. And as that statement said, that's not been the case, and to say the first and the second division games can't play for 3 weeks because they're part-time players who are more likely to catch the virus than not. I seem to forget that there are 2 part-time clubs in that championship, Arbroath and Alloa, who will have people going away and working day-to-day jobs through no fault of their own. So they come into that category as well. But we all know, and you keep saying it, Peter, that the only reason that this whole scenario is continuing on is because of money. And it's because of money, and it's because the teams at the top need the money. And that's what this whole thing is based around about, the TV money for the big clubs to survive and stuff everybody else. And that's the way it looks from the outside looking in.
Well, I think I can't argue with you on that point, Roughie. I think we always try and offer a balance on this, and I'll be blunt with you on it, Tam. It is right. A lot of people will be shouting at the screen right now and going, "That's the way of the world. That's life." Where I disagree with it, Tam, is if they had a collective responsibility for the good of the game, they would have helped everybody out. They would have looked and come up with a plan that benefited everyone rather than the few. But that's what it's all about. Greed, no sporting integrity, backstabbing, and I certainly have it all documented when I look back over this year of the skullduggery that went on from clubs, which I found was despicable from March onwards.
Yeah, when we spoke about it away last year, Peter, we were laughing at every club owner, every club chief executive, whoever it may have been, club chairman. Any statement they come out with, they tend to end it with "for the good of Scottish football." And then if you had to stand back because their nose was just about to shoot out by an extra several inches, they were all only in it looking after themselves. And don't get me wrong, you could argue they were perfectly entitled, but don't lie about it. I mean, me as a Motherwell fan, I want first and foremost the board at Motherwell to look after the interests of everybody at Fir Park, including the fans. But the statements that were coming out rather glibly with all this stuff about, oh no, we need to look at the bigger picture and hope that Scottish football flourishes. Nothing of the sort. It was garbage. And we did have the chance to rejig the leagues after the football had been stopped last year. But again, they weren't interested in that. And that goes back to what Roughie's saying, maybe having to slice up the pie into too many parts. They weren't keen on that, the bigger clubs. But the thing that I took out of the Partick Thistle statement, Peter, when you read it there, they're saying about how they may have to look at furloughing staff. The absolutely alarming and quite tragic thing is that the furlough scheme isn't going to last forever. And I'm afraid at the next stage after that, when the furlough scheme ends, it's simply what they have to then do with staff is basically get rid of them, make them redundant. And a lot of good people, and like at every club, it's not necessarily the best people at the club that earn the big money. In a lot of cases, it will be low-paid members of staff who will really, really bear the brunt of this and get punted. It's a real shame.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the messages we got there from Gavin says, talking about clubs that could be emerging out of this as a real force in the forthcoming years. It could be Queen's Park. There's no doubt about the backer that they have has got a substantial amount of money in Willie Hockey, but the Queen's Park chief executive is now Leanne Dempster. This is what she had to say on her new position. I think it was well known that she was going to join them. I've loved every moment of my time in football, and winning the Scottish Cup with Hibs was a career highlight. But after 13 years in the Premier League, I was ready for a new challenge, and Queen's Park offers an amazing opportunity. The club has raised funds through the sale of Hampden, has engaged and committed sponsors and supporters, and has turned professional. There is now a real determination to write a new chapter, one that sees the club grow on and off the pitch organically, rooted in its communities, doing things differently, creating a new sustainable model to progress a club up through the levels. The community part of the clubs, the ability to touch lives through what we do, has always been a big appeal to me. And Queen's Park has big plans in that regard, which we will reveal as we move forward. So there you are. That's exactly where Leanne has turned up, Tam.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest compliment I can pay Leanne Dempster, I'm a big fan of her and all the stuff that she did at Motherwell. And I went on record at the time when we lost at the Hibs, when the Hibs maybe dangled a wee bit of a better financial package in front of our nose, that I said it might be one of the biggest losses that we've had at the clubs. We've had players that have been snapped up by other clubs because they were doing the business on the park at Motherwell. But Leanne was right up there for me, one of the biggest losses. I was gutted when she went. We were very lucky that she was followed by Alan Burrows. If there's ever a man that's got his club's interests at heart, it's Alan, an absolute dyed-in-the-wool Motherwell fan. But the biggest tribute, Peter, I'll pay Leanne Dempster is that when I first heard, almost in passing, that Leanne was moving on from Hibs, I actually thought what the person had said was Queen's Park Rangers. And, I didn't raise a single eyebrow because I thought, yeah, that sounds about right. Leanne going down to a big club in England, because that's always where I thought she was going to end up. But the Queen's Park story, I find it utterly, utterly fascinating. And you could really watch that club go. They've absolutely, this is a statement of intent as far as I'm concerned, bringing in somebody off the park with the pedigree of Leanne Dempster. And on the park, they're top of their division just now. They have gone professional. And unlike a couple of years ago, if a Queen's Park game had happened to be on the telly, you wouldn't have known any of the players in the team. No harm to them. But suddenly,
yeah, I take Tam's point on that. And of course, Roughie, worryingly for you, they're a club with a hell of a lot of money. So they could become the third biggest Glasgow club.
Yeah, they possibly could. I think obviously with money behind you, you can see how these teams move up the league. You look at Gretna, who had a lot of money behind them and drastically moved up the the leagues. I mean, Tam touched on it there. I thought she was going to bigger and better things, but it's a challenge. It seems to be the challenge for her, that everything that brings to try and take them up the leagues. My biggest problem with the whole thing would be fan base. I don't know what kind of fan base you're talking about here if you go up through the leagues, with everything else that's in Glasgow. We saw the likes of like Clyde and all them all struggling to get a crowd and moving. That's the only thing that I find hard to believe, that she would go there, and what her objectives would be. Obviously, to go up through the leagues. Yeah, they've got the money to go up through the leagues, but what kind of fan base? That would be the only thing I would be thinking about.
Yeah.
On that note, Peter, I wonder if, they've got real go-getters now at that club, including the major financial backer, including Leanne herself. I think, Peter, you can correct me, was it not maybe Tranmere in years gone by down south? They moved their games maybe to a Friday night to try and get a better crowd in. I wonder if that's something that Queen's Park would maybe think about, and for the floating supporters at Celtic and Rangers who maybe even stay and always have stayed in the vicinity of Hampden. We know they're going to be playing at Lesser Hampden. I wonder if that's a way to tap in to some extra punters as they maybe moving. I was going to say move their games away for 3 o'clock on a Saturday, but when the world is normal and that, when do Celtic and Rangers ever play at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, so maybe they won't need to. I've just lost my argument there.
Yeah, absolutely. And at times, listen, you won't be the first or the last person, Tam, just to pose a question, answer it yourself, and then start talking to yourself. Don't worry about it. That's what's happening right now. I must apologise to everyone who listens to our podcast, because Tam's like one of our pundits in a goldfish bowl. Every now and then I remind him that when he sniffs and he's got his mic up there, you can hear somebody sniffing. So if you're walking around Strathclyde Park at the moment and you hear, that's Tam, and then don't look behind you in Strathclyde Park and start to panic. And incidentally, Tam, Strathclyde Park is an area close to where you used to live. I just wanted to remind you of that, on the basis that I was walking around it the other day there, and I really started to panic when I see people walking on the solid water. I don't know about you, but I mean, there are people who've been on, skating up and down everywhere, and I start to panic when I see kids and everybody on the solid ice out there.
Absolutely. The Strathclyde Park is just down the road from where I used to live, Peter. Thank you for that. It's also just down the road from Fir Park, which is actually the closest football team to where you live. But the ice issue, yes, the ice issue. I think, and I'm sure Darren's seen it, and I'm sure Roughie's seen it, and you as well. I think that anybody that you've seen playing on a frozen lake over the past week has clearly never seen Damien Omen 2 and the ice hockey scene. It's one of the most it gives me a shiver to this day. One of the most terrifying scenes I've ever seen in any movie.
Yeah, Halloween springs to mind as well. Yeah. Anyway, apart from anything else,
what about Titanic?
Yeah, well, we just get through terrible movies. I preferred it when Tam was asking questions to himself. Anyway, listen, just before we go, there is a small matter. I don't know which game you'll want to watch tonight. I mean, sometimes if you get your fill of football, there's a saturation point. But Man United and Burnley and Wolves and Everton are on. The reason why I mention it is because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his Man United side could be hitting the top of the table and all the frenzy that comes with that.
We are better off this season than compared to the same time as last year. We won more games, we've scored more goals, we've played better football. So of course that's a positive. And but as I said, no one remembers January league tables.
Yeah, nobody remembers anything in January. That's all right for Ollie Roughie down south, but you could look at our table now. It's not going to change much by the time we get to May, is it?
No, it isn't. I think the English one's going to be really exciting right to the end. That obviously all the big boys are hovering about there. And again, I mean, the English league seems to just catch your imagination as the season goes on. But I mean, good luck to you all. I don't think any of us thought he was going to be in this position 2 months ago, when he was getting it in the neck. So, it's always good to see a new manager coming in and proving everybody wrong.
Yeah, just in case some people who post messages, I try and read as many as possible. As you can appreciate, there's thousands come in, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter as well. John Coots, every now and then. John Coots doesn't care what we're talking about. We could be talking about nuclear physics, and John just puts Mon the Rose and well done the Rose and everything about Bonnie Rig Rose. So I thought I would mention it. I thought it's worthy of mention, Darren, because I thought they were magnificent the other night there. I mean, for one moment, I had the phone out like Roughie sometimes does when he wants to give me belters. I was just about to text Charlie Adam to give it. You've been knocked out of the cup, but they were absolutely magnificent, weren't they? The Bonnie Rig Rose deserve a huge mention.
Brilliant. I was texting Lockie through the game, and obviously they mentioned Lockie in the game, and he was frustrated not being able to be there because we know how much a big Hearts fan he is, but he's just as big a Bonnie Rig Rose fan, and they did unbelievably well. I mean, you just see what they put into it. The striker, I thought they were going to have to put a stretcher on to take him off the pitch because he was absolutely out on their feet, Peter. And once it went into the extra time, I thought there was absolutely no chance they're going to go up the park again, get anywhere near but they got a penalty, and all credit to them. It was brilliant, and it was probably devastating that they've scored. Dundee have scored the 93rd minute, but credit to them, they were brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And another little touch, Tam, as we're about to finish the programme, football, can be, on more than a few occasions, there's lovely little touches of kindness and solidarity, and I think sometimes it gets lost. I know Roughie and I have been talking about the sporting integrity, but it was a nice little touch from Tottenham to give all of the Marine players a Tottenham Hotspur shirt, a fresh one. Because of obviously the COVID, you can't obviously exchange the shirts, but a fresh one as a memento of their FA Cup game. And I just thought it was a great touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great day for the minnows as well, Peter, as you may have read. We know that you can't click through the turnstiles right just now, but they said that 20,000 punters bought the live footage of the game. So that would be a tidy wee sum. I mean, I know on average it can be anything between 10 and 15, 18 pounds to buy a game to have it streamed in Scotland. Famously, English football charges a lot more money to get into games, so they may have made a pretty penny with that. But a nice wee gesture for Spurs. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Tam, it was 30,000 at a tenner a ticket. 300,000.
Oh, was it?
The captain came out and said that will keep the club for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 30,000 bought the tickets at a tenner a time. Brilliant.
Can I just before we finish?
Wait a minute. No, Tom, I'm on the phone to Jerry Britton. I'm just phoning just to see if there's any way Partick Thistle can play Tottenham in a friendly.
Can I ask you, and I've got a lot of time for both guys, mainly because one of them is the brand new Motherwell manager, but I noticed that on camera at the Aberdeen Rangers game that both Paul Hartley and Graham Alexander were up in the stand. Given that the game was live on television to be watched in the comfort of your own home, was that essential travel? Could either of those guys get in trouble for going to the game?
No,
I wouldn't think so. I think for a manager,
the sport
is it deemed they're at their work? They're at their work. They're there.
Sporting elite.
And again, the camera angle doesn't pick up all the things that you professionals would notice. So you need to be there in the flesh. Yeah.
Tam, I get into games because it's essential, because I'm a scout, because I'm going to scout players for Blackpool, because especially this time the transfer window's open, so it is essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, everybody tries to adhere to the rules. And of course, sometimes if you look at two players in the stand as well, like Graham Alexander with a beard moustache closely 2 metres away would have been Paul Hartley, and it would be difficult to work out which one was the Motherwell manager. The thinner one was the Motherwell manager. So that's Graham Alexander. He'll give me pelters for that. He'll absolutely batter me for that, Hartley. The bold Zico. Anyway, I have to tell you guys, thank you very much for all your messages. I don't know about you, Tam. I've now started to watch the thick of it from episode 1 all the way through. There's a lot of bad language in it. I have to pause it every time my daughter comes into the room, but it's getting me through our third lockdown. Are you going to offer anything to anyone who watches the programme on what you're watching?
Yeah, absolutely. I will be watching the Dundee United St Johnstone game tonight, but I would have recorded it and watched it later if Beat the Chasers had still been on. They did a 2-week series. It was the revamped version of the Chasers, where one punter can go up against 5 chasers up against the clock, and it was the best format of a quiz show I've seen since Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was launched in 1998. So get it on catch up. Anybody that's missed Beat the Chasers, you'll be on the edge of your seat every single episode.
Yeah, is Dundee United St Johnstone on the telly tonight?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
If not live,
we
don't want. We've already upset Tesco and Musselburgh. We've upset all sorts of other people today. It is that I'm thinking it's live on the telly because there are highlights on Sports Scene later tonight, and I think contractually they can only do that if the game was on live earlier. So check it out.
Great,
check the schedule.
You can catch it in Dubai.
Yeah, absolutely. And there you are. There's Roughie to leave us with a controversial line, which should get another 3,000 messages of hatred towards Roughie and all the trolls. Thanks for watching the programme. We'll see you tomorrow.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.